Who do you think you are to say no to my mother in front of everyone?
Tunde, stop it now. You are causing a scene. Tunde, please. It's not like that. I'm your wife, not your family's wallet.
Then you are nothing in this house anymore.
He chose them over her. This wasn't the first time his family had asked for money. She realized the cost of her silence all those years. That night, he ordered her to leave the house. And worse, they were already planning to take over the shop she had spent her youth building. But what they didn't know was, in the next 72 hours, Amaka wouldn't cry, wouldn't beg. She would quietly prepare a move that would make all of them pay in a way they never expected. If it were you, would you choose to keep the marriage or keep your dignity? Tell me which city you're watching this story from, and I wish you good health, peace, and strength in your life. Amaka didn't go back to that house the night she was slapped. She sat in her car for nearly 2 hours, the air conditioner still running, but her hands were ice cold. Lagos was as noisy as ever. The sound of traffic, street vendors calling out, music spilling from roadside shops. But inside her head, there was only one question repeating over and over again. How many signs did I ignore for things to end up like this? She wasn't a weak woman. At 32, Amaka had built her small hair business in Surulere, long before she married Tunde. In the early days, she did everything herself. Selling, learning marketing on an old phone, filming wig videos under a cheap ring light. Customers came slowly, not many, but enough for her to believe. If she stayed consistent, her life would change. And then Tunde came into her life. A polite man working at a bank, the kind who knew exactly what to say to make you feel safe. He didn't promise anything grand. He simply said, I want to build a real family. And Amaka believed him. But after the wedding, things began to change in very small ways. So small that she kept convincing herself, it's nothing serious. It started with money. Tunde suggested merging their accounts, saying it would be easier to manage. It sounded reasonable. Then came his family. My mother is only staying for a few weeks, he said when Mama Tunde arrived with her suitcase. But a few weeks turned into months. And 8 months later, she was still there, along with his younger brother, and sometimes relatives who came to stay for a few days. In their culture, it wasn't entirely wrong. In many Nigerian families, taking care of parents is a responsibility. But what began to unsettle Amaka wasn't the helping. It was how everything slowly turned into an unspoken obligation. Mother needs money for medication. My brother needs capital to start a business. The family is struggling, you understand, right? At first, Amaka didn't refuse. She thought, I'm his wife. This is his family. I should contribute. But gradually, she began to notice. Every time she hesitated, Mama Tunde's eyes would change. No longer soft like before, but sharper, heavier, like a silent reminder. You owe this family. Her hair business started doing better. She had loyal customers, even bulk buyers. But strangely, the money in their joint account never seemed to grow. Every time she asked, Tunde would just smile and say, I've got it handled. Don't stress. She wanted to believe him. She truly wanted to believe him. Until one evening, as she was calculating costs to upgrade her shop, new chairs, better mirrors. Mama Tunde walked into the living room, glanced at her plans. and said softly, "You should remember, if it weren't for this family, you wouldn't be where you are today." The words weren't loud, they weren't rude, but they stayed with Amaka like a small scratch beneath the skin. And from that moment on, she started seeing things differently. She noticed how Tunda avoided eye contact whenever money came up. She noticed how just this once kept happening again and again. She noticed how his mother spoke about her shop, as if it already belonged to the family. And deep inside, there was a feeling she kept trying to ignore, but it never went away. That maybe she was no longer in control of her own life. But Amaka stayed, not because she didn't see the problem, but because she believed if she was just a little more patient, if she loved a little harder, everything would be okay. She didn't know that her silence was quietly feeding a storm. That morning, Amaka woke up earlier than usual, not because she had slept well, but because she had barely slept at all. Mama Tunde's words from the night before kept replaying in her mind like a small thorn she couldn't pull out at. Still, she went through her routine as if nothing had happened. Boiling water, making tea, preparing breakfast. A part of her still hoped that if she acted like everything was normal, things would somehow fall back into place. "This afternoon, I want to go to Balogun Market," Mama Tunde said, as she sat down at the table, her tone calm as if nothing was wrong. Tunde nodded. "You should go with her. She wants to buy a few things and meet some people." Amma looked up. "I have to open the shop early today. I have a client who booked last week." A brief silence, but long enough for her to feel her mother-in-law's eyes settle on her. "There will always be customers," Mama Tunde said evenly. "Family is what matters." Amaka didn't respond. She simply nodded, and she still went to open her shop as planned. But close to noon, her phone buzzed. It was Tunde. "Come to Balogun," he said shortly. "My mother is waiting." Something in his voice made Amaka uneasy. Still, she closed her shop a little earlier than planned and went. Deep down, she had a quiet feeling that today wouldn't be like the others. Balogun Market was always loud. The bargaining, the shouting, the crowd pushing through narrow paths. Amaka spotted them from a distance. Tunde, standing beside his mother, and next to them were two women she had seen at family gatherings. As Amaka approached, Mama Tunde smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. "Finally you're here," she said. "I was just telling everyone about you, about how well you've been doing." Amaka nodded politely. "Good afternoon." One of the women smiled, looking Amaka up and down. "We've heard you're doing very well. That's something to be proud of." Amaka was about to respond, but Mama Tun spoke over her, her voice slightly louder now, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "So I think it's time for you to give back to the family. Not much, just about 5 million naira. I need it urgently. No question, no privacy. Just a statement in the middle of a crowded market." Amaka stood still for a few seconds. She could feel eyes turning toward her. A part of her wanted to nod immediately, like she had done before, just to end it quickly. But this time, something felt different. "I can't," she said, her voice quiet but clear. The air shifted. "What did you say?" Mama Tunde asked, her smile gone. "I can't give that amount right now." Amaka repeated, this time looking directly at her. A soft laugh came from behind. A few people began whispering. "You're refusing your mother-in-law in public," one woman said, half amused, half shocked. Mama Tunde let out a long breath, shaking her head as if deeply disappointed. After everything this family has done for you, I don't owe anyone, Amaka said, her voice firmer now for the first time. I help when I can, but that doesn't mean I have to say yes every time. Those words were like a spark hitting fuel. What are you doing? Tunde stepped closer, his voice low but tense. Why are you talking to my mother like that? I'm just telling the truth. Amak replied, her heart racing, but she didn't step back. You're embarrassing me, he said, or maybe you're just not used to me not staying silent. A moment of silence, and then smack. The sound cut through the crowded space. Amaka's head snapped to the side. Her ears rang. The noise around her faded into the distance. She didn't feel the pain immediately, just a strange emptiness. Don't ever speak to my mother like that again, Tunde said coldly. Slowly, Amaka turned to look at him. The man she once trusted now stood in front of her like a stranger. No one stepped in, no one spoke. A few people watched, then looked away, as if this was normal, and that hurt her more than anything. She didn't cry, didn't say another word. She simply turned and began to walk away. Where are you going? Tunde called after her. She stopped, but didn't turn around. Go home, pack your things. You need to leave before tonight, he said. Amaka gave a small nod. No argument, no questions. But inside her, something had completely shifted. Not pain, but clarity. Pulsive, if you've ever witnessed a moment where everything changed in just a few seconds, comment, Eno you if you understand that feeling. Amaka didn't go back to that house that night. She drove aimlessly through the familiar streets of Lagos, through Surulere, then down toward Lekki, as if she was searching for a place where she could finally breathe again. But the truth was, there was no such place. When the person you love betrays you in front of others, there is no space wide enough to hold that feeling. She stopped outside a 24/7 print shop. The cold white lights spilled onto the sidewalk. Amaka sat there for a few minutes, staring at the cracked screen of her phone. Then she opened her contacts. Her finger paused on a name she had never imagined she would need. Ngozi, lawyer. Hello, I need help, Amaka said when the call was answered. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised even her. The next morning, Amaka sat in Ngozi's small office, a woman in her 40s with sharp but not unkind eyes. Papers, pens, and a cup of coffee gone cold lay on the desk. First, Ngozi said, I need you to stay calm and answer me clearly. The business, whose name is it under? Mine, Amaka replied immediately. I registered it before I got married. Ngozi nodded. The lease also in my name. I've been paying it myself every month. Brief silence. Then Ngozi looked straight at her. Then they have no right to take it. The words were simple, but they felt like an anchor holding Amaka steady in the middle of chaos. But they said, they invested in me, Amaka said quietly. Ngozi tilted her head. Do they have any documents? Amaka shook her head. Transfers? Contracts? Any proof at all? Amaka paused for a few seconds. Then she remembered. Tunde gave me 500,000 naira when I started. But I paid him back after 3 months. I still have the messages and the statements. Ngozi smiled slightly. Good, very good. Then she leaned forward, her voice slowing. Now let me ask you this. Do you have access to your joint account? Yes. Then tonight I need you to do something. Print out the last 18 months of statements. Every transaction. Don't miss anything. Amaka nodded, though a strange feeling was beginning to rise inside her. That night, she sat in the corner of the print shop, fluorescent lights shining over sheets of paper, slowly filling with numbers. At first, she was just following instructions. But then, she started reading. One transaction, then two, then 10. Transfer to Margaret Adibio. 1,200,000 naira. Transfer to Margaret Adibio. 850,000 naira. Transfer to Margaret Adebayo. 2,000 naira. Her heart began to pound. She kept scrolling. Page after page. Dates stretched out, amounts growing. Some months, twice, some weeks, even more. She pulled out a calculator. Her hands trembled, but she kept pressing the buttons. When the total appeared, she froze. Over 75 million naira. Not once, not a mistake. But a year and a half. Amaka sat there in silence. She didn't cry, didn't gasp, just a stillness. So deep she couldn't even name what she was feeling. She remembered the nights she sat calculating expenses, trying to save every bit to improve her shop. The times she refused to buy things she liked because she needed to think about the future. The times she asked Tunde, and he said everything was fine. Everything was not fine. It had never been fine. She printed everything, 3 copies, folded them neatly, put them in her bag. The next morning, Amaka returned to Ngozi's office. The lawyer read through every page, said nothing for a few minutes. Then she placed the documents down. "This is no longer just a family issue," Ngozi said slowly. "This is financial abuse." Amaka looked up. "But the money is from a joint account," she began. "Yes," Ngozi interrupted gently. Legally, he has access. But if we can prove he intentionally concealed it, deceived you, and used the money without transparency, then we have grounds to protect you." Amaka stayed quiet. "The question now isn't whether you are right," Ngozi continued. "The question is, what do you want to do next?" Silence. Amaka looked down at her hands. They were no longer shaking. I don't want to argue," she said. "I don't want to shout or explain." She lifted her head. "I want them to understand without me having to say much." Ngozi studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then we won't say anything," she said. "We'll let the truth speak." And for the first time since the slap at Balogun, Amaka no longer felt like a victim. She was preparing, not for revenge, but to take back control of her life. 3 days later, Lagos was still as loud as ever. But for Amaka, time seemed to move at a completely different rhythm. Precise, cold, leaving no room for unnecessary emotion. She didn't go back home. She didn't call Tunde. She didn't respond to a single message from his family. Everything was silent, a silence chosen on purpose. On the first day, Amaka started with the basics. She called her 2 biggest clients, Afioma, who owned a small chain of salons in Yaba, and Zara, who bought wigs in bulk for resale. "I'm relocating," Amaka said calmly, as if she were announcing a normal business move. "The new place is bigger, better. I'll send you the address soon." No one asked too many questions. They trusted her. And in business, trust is sometimes worth more than money. Then she called her landlord, Mr. Adekunle. "Sir, I need to end my lease early," she said. There was a pause on the other end. "Is everything okay, Amaka?" "I'll be fine," she replied softly. "I just need to move out today." Another pause. Then he sighed. "You've paid your rent on time for 3 years. If you say you need to leave, I trust you have your reasons. Thank you, sir, Amaka said. That was something she was beginning to understand. Not everyone treats you like an obligation. Some people simply see how you live, and they respect you the way you deserve. By noon, Amaka had rented a small truck. 3 men came to help her pack. They didn't ask questions. They just worked. Quick, efficient, professional. Mannequin heads were wrapped one by one. Wigs packed into boxes. Mirrors, chairs, the POS machine, the ring light. Everything slowly disappeared from the space. She had spent 3 years building. No tears, no loud regret. Just a very quiet ending. On the second day, Amaka moved everything into a small room her younger sister, Chidinma, had lent her. It wasn't a shop, just a temporary space. But it was hers. Are you okay? Chidinma asked, looking at the stacks of boxes. Amaka nodded. I'm starting over. Chidinma didn't say anything else. She just hugged her. And sometimes, that's all you need. On the third day, Amaka returned to the old shop one last time. The room was empty. White walls exposed marks where mirrors once hung. The floor was so clean it felt cold. She picked up a broom, swept the floor once, not because she had to, but because she wanted to end things properly. Then she placed a white envelope in the center of the room. Inside were 3 things. First, a letter from Gozi's law firm, confirming Amaka's full legal ownership of the business. Second, bank statements, each transaction clearly highlighted. Third, a handwritten note. Didn't edit it, just folded it and left it there. Around 4 p.m. Amaka locked the door. For the last time. She wasn't there when they arrived, but she knew they would. And they did. That evening, her phone buzzed. It was Kimi, the woman who owned the small drink shop next door. Amaka, you should see this, Kimi said, her voice filled with shush. They're standing outside, like they've just lost something. Amaka didn't respond right away. He opened the door, Kimi continued. Then just stood there, didn't say a word. His mother didn't say anything either. They just looked around, like they couldn't understand what was happening. Amaka closed her eyes for a moment, not out of regret, but because everything had finally been put back in its rightful place. He picked up the envelope, Kemi said. His hands were shaking. I don't know what's inside, but I've never seen him like that. Amaka smiled faintly. That's the truth, she said. She hung up. Outside, Lagos was still loud, still restless. But inside Amaka, everything had changed. She didn't shout to prove she was right. She didn't seek revenge to make anyone suffer. She simply took back what belonged to her. And sometimes that's the most powerful way to say, I deserve respect. 2 days after the shop was emptied, Amaka's phone began to buzz non-stop. But she didn't rush to answer. She had learned something. Not every call deserves an immediate response. The first message came from an unknown number. Amaka, it's Chioma. Amaka stared at the screen for a few seconds. The name wasn't unfamiliar. Tunde's Wadia. Tunde's cousin. The one his family had planned to bring in to take over her shop. She didn't reply right away. But the second message came quickly. I'm sorry. I need to tell you the truth. Can we meet? There was something in the way it was written. Not confident, not demanding, but anxious. Amaka thought for a moment, then sent back the address of a small cafe in Ikeja. Chioma arrived before her. A young woman, around 25, dressed simply, her hands fidgeting, as if she didn't know where to place them. Thank you for coming, Chioma said softly. Amaka didn't waste time. What do you want to say? Chioma took a deep breath. I didn't know the truth until I saw the shop empty. Amaka said nothing. Auntie Margaret told me it was the family's business, that you were just managing it, that you weren't honest about the money, and they needed someone more trustworthy. Amaka let out a small laugh, not because it was funny, but because everything finally made sense. And you believed her? She asked. Chioma lowered her head. I just graduated. I didn't have a job. When they told me I could run a shop in Lagos, I thought it was an opportunity. She looked it up, her eyes red. I didn't know it was yours. I didn't know what Tunde had done until I saw everything. Amaka studied the young woman in front of her. Not everyone is bad. Some people are simply pulled into stories they don't fully understand. So now you know, Amaka said. Chioma nodded, then took out her phone. Not just that, I have this. She opened a message and handed it to Amaka. A text from Mama Tunde. Don't worry about Amaka. She's just a lucky village girl. She has no family in Lagos. When you take over, make sure you keep 40% of the profits for the family. That's our share. Amaka read it. Then read it again. Not because she was shocked, but because it confirmed everything she had felt without ever having proof. There's more, Chioma said. Another message. If she causes trouble, we'll handle her. She has no one backing her. Amaka placed the phone down. Her hands didn't shake. Just a very deep silence. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Chioma swallowed. Because I have 2 younger sisters. And if one day they end up in a situation like yours, I would want someone to tell them the truth. A simple sentence, but enough. Amaka nodded. Thank you. At that moment, her phone buzzed again. The name on the screen, Tunde. She looked at it, didn't answer, but a few minutes later he appeared right in front of the cafe. No longer the polished man he used to be, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red. The man who once made her feel safe now looked like he was losing control of himself. Amaka, please, he said as he stepped closer. Chioma stood up and quietly stepped away. Amaka remained seated. I was wrong, Tunde said, his voice hoarse. I didn't think things would go this far. I was just under pressure. Pressure? Amaka repeated softly. My family, they kept saying you didn't respect them, that you had money but wouldn't share. I just wanted to keep the peace. By taking my money without telling me? She asked. Tunde lowered his head. I was going to tell you. I just didn't find the right time. Amaka looked at him. No anger, no visible pain, just clarity. Do you know what the worst part is? She said. It's not the money. It's not even a slap. Sundi looked up. It's that you made me believe I was part of your family, when in reality, I was just their source of income. Silence filled the space. We can fix this, Tun said quickly. I'll talk to my mother. I'll cut them off. I'll do anything. Amaka shook her head. You should have done that before you chose them over me. One sentence. But it closed the door. Amaka, his voice softened. She's done, she said. She stood up, looked at him one last time. You didn't lose me today, she said. You lost me a long time ago. And then she walked away without turning back, not because she didn't feel anything, but because she had chosen herself. Wallace, if you believe some apologies come too late. Comment too late if you understand that feeling. After that meeting at the cafe, Amaka didn't look back again. Not because she no longer had feelings, but because she understood. Some doors, once closed, are not meant to be opened again. They are meant to protect you. In the days that followed, her life didn't suddenly become easy. There were no miracles, no overnight transformation where everything magically fell into place. She moved all her belongings into Chidinma's small room. During the day, she still worked on her regular clients, sitting on a plastic chair, using a mirror hung temporarily on the wall. At night, she planned. Slowly, step by step. Ngozi called her one morning. "We need to talk about your next step," the lawyer said. "You can file for divorce immediately, and with the evidence you have, you can absolutely demand compensation for that money." Amaka stayed quiet for a few seconds. 75 million naira. Not a small amount. It was her hard work. The nights she ate instant noodles to save money. The times she refused to buy things she liked just to think about the future. "But if you do that," Ngozi continued, "you'll have to go to court. It could take time, it could cost you money and your peace." Amaka looked out the window. Lagos was still moving, as always. People chasing work, chasing money, chasing what they believed mattered most. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. Ngozi didn't answer right away. "I don't live your life, but I know one thing. Not every victory happens in a courtroom." That sentence stayed with Amaka all day. That night, she sat alone in the small room. No noise from her husband's family, no pressure to keep the peace. Just her and silence. And for the first time in a long time, that silence didn't scare her. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Ngozi. "I want a divorce. Fast, clean, no further legal battles." She sent it without hesitation, not because she forgave, but because she understood. Holding on to anger is like keeping yourself trapped in the past. 3 months later, everything was finalized. No dramatic scene. No tears, no late apologies. Just 2 words. "It's over." But what surprised Amaka was that her life didn't end there. It began again. From that small room, she slowly rebuilt. Old customers came back. They didn't care where she was working. They cared about how she worked, how she treated them. "You do amazing hair, but what I love most is how you respect your clients," a young woman once told her. Amaka smiled. Maybe that was exactly what had been missing in her marriage. 6 months later, she rented a small space in Yaba, not as big as before. And most importantly, it was hers, completely. She hired 2 young women, new to Lagos just like she once was. "Here you won't just learn a skill," Samaksa told them. "You'll learn how to stand on your own." She didn't just teach them how to do hair. She taught them how to say no. She taught them that respect is not something you beg for. It's something you protect. Sometimes she heard news about Tunde. He had moved back in with his mother. His job wasn't stable anymore. His new relationships never lasted. People asked her, "Do you feel satisfied?" Amaka would just shake her head. Not because she was above it, but because she no longer cared. And that was real freedom. A year later, Amaka was invited for a small interview with a local magazine. "What's the most important thing you learned from your experience?" the interviewer asked. Amaka thought for a moment. Then she said slowly that you don't have to lose yourself to keep a relationship. And if a place makes you shrink your worth, then that place is not home. She paused. And that respect is not a luxury. It's the foundation. Outside, Lagos kept moving. But inside Amaka, everything was finally still. Not because life was perfect, but because she had chosen right. But Amaka's story didn't end with freedom. It continued in a way she never expected. One afternoon, as she stood in front of her new shop, small but bright and clean, with a handwritten sign that read Amaka Hair Studio, a woman walked in. Early 30s, simply dressed, her eyes as hesitant. "Do you take apprentices?" she asked. Amaka looked at her for a moment. That look, she had seen it before in herself years ago, when she first arrived in Lagos, when she had nothing except hope. "Have you done this before?" Amaka asked. "No, but I'm willing to learn. I just need a chance." Amaka smiled. "Here, I won't just teach you how to do hair," she said. "I'll teach you how to stand, no matter what life throws at you." The woman started it the next day. Then another one joined. And slowly, Amaka's small shop became more than just a place for beauty. It became a place where women could begin again, without judgment, without pressure, without being treated as someone else's obligation. A year later, Amaka stood in front of a large mirror in her new shops, no longer a temporary room, but a brighter, bigger space filled with laughter, customers, and staff who called her sister. She looked into the mirror, not to fix her hair, but to recognize how much she had changed. No longer the woman who tried to please everyone. No longer the woman afraid of losing a relationship, but someone who knew her worth and would never let anyone take that away again. Her phone buzzed softly, a message from an unknown number. "Hello, Amaka, I read your story in a magazine. Because of you, I found the courage to leave a relationship that didn't respect me." "Thank you." Amaka read it, then put her phone down. She didn't reply immediately. She just exhaled softly, and because now she understood something. Sometimes the best thing isn't that you win against someone. It's that your story helps someone else not go through what you did. Outside, the Lagos sun was setting. Golden light poured through the glass, wrapping the shop in warmth. And this time, Amaka no longer felt like she was chasing anything. She was standing exactly where she belonged. There are women who don't leave the first time they are hurt. They stay, they try, they hope. Not because they are weak, but because they believe in the value of family, because they believe love can heal everything. But life, honest and unfiltered, sometimes teaches us a different lesson. Love cannot survive without respect. And when you have to shrink yourself just to fit into someone else's world, then it is no longer love. Amaka didn't become strong in a single moment. She grew stronger little by little. Through the times she stayed silent, the moments she questioned herself. Am I the one doing something wrong? And even through the nights, her heart broke in ways no one could see. But one day, she understood something this deeply important. The most dangerous thing is not being hurt by others, but accepting that pain as something normal. There is a truth no one teaches us when we are young, that you don't have to be chosen to have value. You don't have to sacrifice your self-respect to keep a relationship. And you don't need anyone's permissions to walk away from a place where you are no longer respected. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Letting go doesn't mean losing. Sometimes it's the way you save yourself. And perhaps the greatest victory in life is not making someone regret what they did to you. It's waking up one day, looking back at everything you've been through, and realizing you no longer hurt, No longer feel anger. No longer need them to understand. What remains is a version of yourself, calmer, clearer, and fully aware that you deserve to be loved. But more importantly, you deserve to be respected.